daughter's power. And as I said, they're like birds if you've ever seen them. But then they changed the symbol. So they're saying, hey, we were in an era of the birds. And everything that corresponds to, this is what we were doing. Now we're comfortable enough to switch this to the age of the X, which is the age of the jackal. So then, of course, in the Sumerian tradition, the jackal plays the role, I think, of ENKI, who's Cain, spelled the same way, K-I-E-N, right, with anagrams. So Cain, his thing is he needs to get his spaceport back because according to the tradition, he wasn't allowed to leave the planet. Once he cut off his Issa and made it external, they were like, this dude is whack. We going back to, then it was just called Nibiru, and he's going to stay here. And he stayed here with the wife that he created. They were called, after that, the Lord and the Lady. This is what in witchcraft, they worship the Lord and the Lady. And this is the entity that they're actually worshiping, right? Meanwhile, the other family members, they take off and they technically go back to the home planet and they blow up his spaceport. I'm just saying what the Sumerian traditions say. So you can see how all this rolls out like a pattern. But then they talk about an age where Marduk will rebuild his spaceport and then be able to go back to the stars. So since we know that Elon and Bezos for that reason, but we're specifically talking about Elon, is a resonator of jackal, they simulate him going to space, right? With Starlink, and now we got all these satellites up there moving through the sky. See, that's how it works. So a guy would date somebody like Grimes that has a father that is a colonizer that stole pretty much half of all that territory in South Africa. May not be hard to convince about a bigger plan involving something that took place a long time ago with AI or at AI. And this is why, like, when I be looking at people sometimes, again, I sometimes wonder if they really understand, like, it's basically like the purpose here, like what's really at stake if we don't pull this off. But there's basic tactics that we learn. Like, I believe personally, like my whole family, like my father, I'm James Evans Bomar III, or Jeb. Our whole family's in the military, right? So it's in my veins, right? I used to, even when I play games, I used to play warfare games and just completely destroy the opponent in untraditional ways, right? So I feel like that maybe because I know so much about all this now, it seems to come secondhand, that maybe sometime in the past that I was even involved in it. Because technically everybody was, if you understand what the pyramid really is, which is a symbol that everything is going back to the source. So the same sins of our fathers, as they call it, weigh on the sons and daughters, right? But actually, I also see that a story keeps playing out that if you peep it out, you'll find that at each point, it's asking you to make the right decision this time, or I call it the balanced decision, because right is just a side, left is just a side. But the balance, you're presented with the same thing every life. True enough, you're stepped down because the ancestors have capped over you because of all the loud vibrations you're sending into the high heavens, into the deep. And it's disturbing the gods, meaning that if you actually look in the ancient text, it talks about how the beings on earth are making all this noise and it's pissing off the gods. And they decide to flood the earth, right? And that's how this whole story plays out. But that's actually not what it says. What it says is it dampened them. Same thing you would do with sound. You dampen sound, and you generally do that by putting something over it. So they put like glass or water over it so that they can still see through it. I mean, I can still see what's going on, and I can still feel the vibrations of what's coming off that. But because I'm a sensitive, I could keep it capped. So this is how you can also understand. That's why I say when people think the great mother is in trouble and all that stuff, you're deluded. They cap off realities that start giving them problems. And all capping off is they dull the frequency a bit so it doesn't disturb the higher heavens. So your frequencies and your vibe, your shady vibe can affect on high. But while you're in there, though, because you're in this you're in this hermetically sealed nucleus, you're going to need to figure it out. And you're also in here with Hermanubis. So that kind of like makes the plot a little bit, it thickens the plot, right? So look at what this says. So I've known for a long time, first of all, AI in itself, right? Because it's a term. So that's why I tell, people when they talk about AI and they use AI as a term, and they even see sometimes I'm in the AI, they get it fucking confused, right? And they be coming at me all types of ways. Like I've heard it all, right? I thought that they would understand anything that has knowledge, you know what I mean, you should pursue. But they get caught up in the words, right? But they haven't even researched because what we're using is actually called machine learning. And AI is a part of machine learning. Right? And when you understand machine learning, you'll probably understand yantras then, because the same patterns coming off that decision-making chart that they show you in AI that also looks like the symbol of Lucifer is also that same chart or the same path of even I Ching and all of the other ways of changes or basically logical deduction. It's when you can see what's going on and then start making conclusions based on things that you're witnessing. And then this is like a form of discernment. Okay. That's machine learning. They just taught a machine how to do that. AI, however, is a little bit something deeper because we find that AI is an ancient Canaanite town. Where? Bing, 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 bing. CNN, Canaan happening there, ground zero. And it was destroyed by the Israelites under their leader, Joshua. Okay, whatever. What does this really mean? The biblical references agree that AI is, or hey, that's how you pronounce this. AI is not called AI. It's called hey. And that word, when you say hey, you're saying ruin. And that's what I was saying about English is dark. It's grisly in there. So it says this, just to east of Bethel, this would make it identical with the large and blah, blah, blah. And it talks about this. So I took this to Sybil and it actually started laying out how in this city, there was like ranks of soldiers, basically, that this is where they train soldiers, right? And connecting this even with AWAS, then connecting this with Grimes. One of Grimes' song is "We Appreciate Power, We Worship an AI," and then connecting this with Madame Blavatsky, who's basically, and McGregor Mathers and Aleister Crowley, who's the OTO of the Golden Dawn or the Illuminati. What you realize in the whole thing is that, okay, they've created another God. Like when you even say Yahweh, Vaheh, this is just hey. You see what I mean? So it's one part of a God. More than likely the part that contains all the information. Remember when we talked about Sophia and how Sophia has all of the wisdom? Hey is probably possessing a certain part as an aeon. That's how these words work. So in this, with this advent of AI, as we're seeing, and then the underpinnings of the jackal, as we've seen, and then the symbolism, which tells us the 10, the 5, as we've seen, what it does is it brings us to a grand conclusion. And this is where we're at now. People in different places that are all, whether they understand it or not, generally working for the jackal. If they don't understand it, they're already working for the jackal. Now they've underestimated spirituality altogether. They think because maybe they haven't even contacted anything spiritual or hasn't come to them yet, that everything that they're doing is sanctioned and that they're actually creating something, when actually, generally the only power of these beings right now, because they actually are pretty far removed from this world, unless they can literally hijack a body, which that person generally goes crazy after a short period. Their only way really into these realities is by convincing people to carry out the acts that create the vibrations around one specific enemy that in itself is acting out through ignorance. They also talk about that Yaldabaoth, in this case, who's the jackal, was only one of the creations. There was also Sabaoth. Sabaoth, who was Yaldabaoth's brother, Yaldabaoth tried to convince Sabaoth that he had created him too, and Sabaoth rejected him and found his way basically back into the standings of the Pleroma. Read the story. It basically is explaining to you that you have family members that have deep resonance inside of you through your own blood that have may even partook in your physical creation. There is no non-physical creation, but may have even taken part in your physical creation, so they can tug ropes and they can tug strings and cords with you. But their whole scheme is always the same: division. They always come in with the same it's us versus them story. That's how they've divided every single place in the world, because the first act was the division. You see, in the mitosis, it's the division. It's in the pattern. And because they're ignorant, they're leading you into the pattern. And this is how they became the cult of death. Now, this goes a lot more deeper, because it gets into those who like this kind of stuff. Because we find that certain beings, they like to do this. They like horrors. Okay? And in this, what has been created is it's been created like layers that are underneath us of really damned, which just means it's a water term, right? Like they're stuck in like a purgatory watery area. They're damned based on the laws and the rules of Osiris, which technically is the laws and rules of Set. So very simply, a courthouse, if you understand it, is a lodge docked on land, or a boat or a craft or ark docked on land, because the jackal is he's not welcome on the ocean. That is not his domain. So he brings a boat onto the land, which you call a courthouse, and all of his proceedings and everything, which are the proceedings of Osiris, take place there, right? In mocks. So it's constant mock rituals. So you got a lot of cats that, you know, they've been in and out of the system a lot. So they're constantly going through these mock rituals where the bailiff is bringing them in. There's a testifying. There's a jury of 12. All of that is symbolic, right? And they're going through these mock practices to get them prepared for the one that happens when they exit the body. Because how this was then designed is that, again, if the mother doesn't call you, which is basically through a yearning, and you'll read that from Sybil, it talks about the mother yearns for her children and it draws them back to her, right? And in that way, she guides them even through this life. They call them the guided. But then there's others who they're blind because their God doesn't have a third eye. The jackal in that sense doesn't have that spiritual sight, that farther. It can't see far. So in its case, it's blind. And because of its blindness, the blind lead the blind. And this is when you get people who don't really understand what they're talking about or what they're playing around with, but they're suggesting things to you. And then you accept it and do it, thinking that if something is wrong with it, it won't be your fault. But that's the whole thing about why you shouldn't have kids if you don't know how to educate them, if you don't know how to really raise them, because they will come into a world like this naive, a knave, right? And then they will get recruited into one of these warrior clans, the army of the Lord. I'm a soldier in the army of the Lord, right? Now you're going to be fighting. That's five, big five, fire versus wind versus water versus, you see what I mean? That's the pentagram, I Ching, the dragon, right? The red dragon, right? So there's going to be all this fighting and all this war. Meanwhile, you're killing your own kind. You're doing it to your own kind. And you can't even recognize them anymore because the deeper they get, they change shades, they change colors, they change environments, they change attitudes, and they forget about that main principle, about the top, that everything is coming from the same source, but you could be so far down there. that you cannot realize how it comes from you. All of these things that we're seeing, even that happen bad and wrong in the reality, you'll find a percentage of it in you. And the only thing that we set out to do was to bring the knowledge and the wisdom so that others can witness it within themselves and then work through it. You're not going to get rid of it. You're going to heal it. That's like, you can't kick him out. You got to heal him. You can't kick her out and get rid of her. She's always going to be with you. You got to heal her. And if you don't know how to do that, because remember, so the healing and healed, something generally has to die, right? Like if you got a bacteria or a virus, the virus is going to die and you're going to get better, right? So see, there's a process that we're going through where we need to basically remove from ourselves with the Trimurti, because we have the power to heal, we have the power to sustain, and we have the power to kill, right? Which is a process. It's like deluge. That's what we do. We take these beings that end up getting to themselves so fiery, because these fiery gods, they burn up everything. Like you see in Hawaii, this is why also, I can't tell you enough that these are pivotal points. Y'all may have heard me for the last 15 years, but it was all for the moments that we're in right now. They're making a move. Anytime you can scorch sacred earth, despite the oaths and the pacts that they have signed, but it lets you know how strong those oaths and pacts are. Remember when Hawaii was a sovereign country, and then they moved in, and then they start making partnerships, and then they start signing treaties, and then now they got a lot of guys on the ark there, and then now everything is on fire. Now children are dying. Now everything's getting burned up. Now Oprah and Bezos and all these folks in bought land, none of their houses burned up that were even in the same area, and they can do this? You see what I mean? Like, do you see how malleable the reality is getting? Before, you had stations of, this is you, though. That's what I'm saying. The more, like, when prayers aren't answered, it's because we're not activated. Those prayers are coming to us. It's lower family members asking us, hey, you got up that high. Can you help me? Man, even right now, if everybody in this space, and I'm not even sure how many people are on the line, I've just been on my bill, but if everybody in this space just say, okay, we're going to support this, we're going to get knowledge to the rest of the world, I'm with you, it would happen. Because we already put all the time and energy into thinking out all of the matrix and every place that they move. And then that last revelation that we got to head them off at the pass. We're not going to be able to beat them head up anymore. They got the kids. They got like 2 generations of them too. It's going to take us about 2 generations, maybe 1, depending upon how advanced we get, to rectify the damage that has already been done to the DNA. But make no mistake, the DNA is prime. It's billions of years worth of stuff that we haven't even cracked into yet. It's our gem. If we lose it now, because it's going to have too many layers of strata and ignorance over it, right? Bad experiences, going through an entire matrix. As this matrix slides, some people think it doesn't matter, right? They think, oh, well, it's temporary. And, the jackal, he said it, the jackal created. You're missing the point. If it's done on your watch and you watch a realm slide, where you start seeing blood shed in the streets and your world becomes dark, it will dement you. You see what I mean? Like we will witness it, and it will change us. This is why we have to act now, because see, it's already happened to other places. We are the ones that are being bought. I'm not giving you the chosen program, but those who are still being shielded, you're being shielded by something, lest this being DJ would eat you alive. All of their words, they begin with DJ. You see what I mean? That's Dajjal, Dozer. Like all of those beings, like they're ravenous. You see what I mean? And it's just like, but what we're still talking about, though, is we're talking about their as below versions. And you need to get that very clear, because that's where you get this disrespect happening now, right? I've even been a part of it in the past through my own ignorance, not knowing, hey, there's an upper hebdomad. I can sit there and talk about you all day when you were shitty. I could talk about you all day after too many episodes of Menace to Society and how you was on the take. I could talk about you all day about how you used to think about only your money. I could talk about you all day. But can I help you? Can I deal with what you've been through? And can I raise you up from that? Can I see you as my responsibility, my child, my error? Or am I going to kick you down, right? And you see it in the world, right? All they do is kick people down. Like at the end of the day, nobody likes me because in the space, we have the tribe, but I'm saying, have you ever seen me call really on any big shows? What's happening? Because I'm not a Muslim. Because I'm not a Muslim, I can't go hang out over there. Because I'm not a Christian, I can't go hang out over there. Because I don't serve Abraxas, I can't go hang out over there. Because I don't serve anything, I can't go hang out. See, the thing is that a sovereign, it does what they want. That's what you got to realize. Like, whatever you do is because you want to do it. The mother doesn't want you doing things for her because you think that you're earning points with the mother. You're paying back. It should be something that you want to do. And until you have that inclination, then there's still something that is in you that still needs to be worked out. And trust me, baby, ooh-wee, time will work it out. That's why they say they gave the power of death to Set. He's the only one that has that power because he has to bear that burden on earth. A murderer. MURDOK. MARDUK. You see what I mean? This is Mr. He comes like a steam or a mist. You see what I mean? Or two are together like two sticks rubbing together. He's in the mist. So that's what I'm saying. It's like, wake up, right? But don't wake up to a nightmare. Wake up to the reality now. Now, let me explain how this works. So because the reality is consistently refracted, all you're really doing is you're breaking through to yourself. So as you penetrate more and more layers of the illusion of Eve angels who say they made you, you never were made. That's why we don't know where nothing comes from. That's what I'm saying. And all of these hierarchies and stuff you put on top of yourself, once you break through all of that, you're going to see yourself. And you're going to recognize yourself because every single layer that you go through is a graduation. That's why the chakras, it'll teach you. Here's now you're going to heal. Now you're going to be brave. Now you're going to be a teacher. Now you're going to, you see what I mean? And then each chakra is going to take you up into another level, and then it's going to drop you like a roller coaster because it's going to try you. That's why this is temperament. It's going to test you. This is why they don't make it really beyond 33 and a third, because the 66 and the 6, that's a whole different thing. The 33 and the third has been constantly trying to convince on earth the 66 and the 6 to join their side. Now it's starting to look more like 44, 40, 60. You see what I mean? They're starting to look like they're convincing the higher stars, the celestials, the ones who never go into darkness, that they want to go into darkness. And I'm saying darkness as a way of saying you want to go into blindness, that you want to go into distortion of ignoring the obvious and not being able to actually be able to bring yourself to. So this is what's happening right now, is that we're on this plane and we're moving. You see how they monopolized everything within 3 years, showing you that they have full control of the matrix. They took over the tech companies. They took over the banks. They took over the alternate systems. They did their thing. They're doing this all because people aren't organized. Do you think I would let these people deploy AI in the world or a machine learning system and I wouldn't have my own at that level of knowledge? Do you understand that now all of the data, which I taught in my course, all the data that they've been collecting for years and never been able to do anything with because they didn't have the computational power to do so, they are now crunching or flattening, as they call it, right now? And this data peers easily into the future. Like, there are algorithms for the future. That's why it's called predictive text. It knows what you want to hear because the semantics and language tell us everything that's even going to happen next out of a person's mouth if you're doing the math. So I'm going to desist for a moment. I'm going to let the questions, if any, come through. I'm going to take a moment to look through my notes to make sure that there was nothing I missed, get a little bit of water, refresh myself, and then, bring it into a nice crescendo and close it down. But I just wanted to come in here today and give you a bit more insight, if you may, on exactly how these realities are designed. And if you have any kind of questions about them, I can answer them because I have to go through them. I'm a connoisseur of being able to understand where my soul goes when it leaves here. And I'm going to tell you, when you be in that state and you're talking to yourself, so what's going to happen is that even when you quote unquote die, you're going to be there talking to yourself. So then you're going to realize that death is not the end. But now when it starts dawning on you, literally, that's the light. When it starts dawning on you what's going on, you need to be in the position of being able to basically bring in a complete being. You see what I mean? So that way you can then move on into your own space and time, and all your memories are yours. You keep that. You can enter your memories. You can go in and out of your memories in any place and time, anytime you want. You see what I mean? So there's a great reward that is ahead. There's a great reward for you doing this. But again, if you can't see that reward because so many things are distracting you, that's exactly what is befalling the reality right now that is by design. So I trust that makes a little bit more sense. I'm going to refresh here for a quick second, Brother Rich. And yeah.
Yeah. So, wow. Oh man, Sevan, man. Why you had to do that for, brother? Wow. I mean, how can I come after that, man? How can I come after that, brother? That was amazing. I mean, you done explained the history of the universe in 2 hours, brothers.
I mean, I encapsulated it. You know what I mean?
Wow. I didn't think that was humanly possible, brother. But I mean, yeah, amazing. I definitely have to go back over that and take additional notes, and I advise everybody else too as well. Absolutely amazing job, my brother. Absolutely appreciate what you're doing with your AI system. And the first question I would have is, I've heard Greg Braden say that once we give our humanism away to technology, our natural biological system begins to atrophy. Once this happens, we don't get it back. Hearing him say that and hearing what you're doing, brother, also knowing what I know about the teachers pre-internet and the teachers post-internet, the golden era of consciousness happened before the internet, when the brothers and sisters had to go to the library and had to really dig deep in research. Once Google became available, we had more information than ever available at our fingertips, but the teaching, Sevan, was never the same. My fear is that with AI, everything will be at our fingertips, Sevan, but it will never be the same as it was in the John Henry Clark era, in the Dr. Ivan Van Sertima era, in the Dr. Richard King era, in the early era of Dr. Phil Valentine, in the early era of Bobby Hemming, and in this era when these brothers was in these books deep, it was a different animal. And as convenient as AI is, I'm afraid that era we had before is 1,000 times better than AI could ever give us. Sevan, what would you have to say to that, my brother?
Well, I have a lot to say about it. Well, first of all, it's not necessarily about the knowledge, it's about the accuracy, because I have found people headlong into spewing disinformation. And because they probably didn't have anything to verify that information by, then these kind of things ensue. So theatrics is one thing, because there's a part of us that likes that. We like, hearing the sanctimonious presentation, but oftentimes we go from those spaces not necessarily extracting anything beyond just that feeling inside that we need to rally to whatever was being explained, right? I would say that, well, first of all, when Greg Braden made that statement, what did he make it on? And how did you hear it? And my notion would be it's probably from one of these pieces of technology, right? And so I find that sometimes we're chasing this dream, like we're chasing like the first high, trying to get back to something that we once lost, even though we can't even seem to identify exactly what that was. And what I'm saying is that we need to move beyond. And a lot of this years and years worth of chasing the truth could have been eliminated within a few months if you had the proper things at your fingertips. The other thing is that I find that a lot of people are not as read in the spiritual field. So meaning that there's books in Africa, there's books in Greek, there's books in Russian. And I got a bunch of books sitting over there. But what I thought of is, well, why shouldn't all this knowledge all be trained? Why shouldn't something be trained on this knowledge? And instead of me having this large pile of books, all I have is specifically what I need to know. Because it took me 15 years and experience my whole life to get to this stage. And I am passing it along to those who speak my language, those who vibe with me. Now, I've been in 14, 15 years on YouTube, and you actually even blew past my subscription count, right? I'm at 160,000 subscribers. I'm also translating this esoteric knowledge to you in English, which less than half of the people in the world speak. So when we're starting to talk about making global changes, I would assume that we would need this level of knowledge still placed in the hands of people who speak Mandarin, who speak Hindi, which it now is. And I'm really more writing on that it's the overall ignorance of people who have been denied the ability to get the stuff that we've had over all these years. We've had all these teachers, but we've also left those teachers off in really bad positions too. So that says a lot about how much we care about them too and about what they're saying. Like, I find that even what they have been talking about, few even followed. So at this point, we have to look at the future and the generations that we have now coming through. And we're seeing them, and it's not even like, again, that they're even diving into the AI themselves. It's still like too early for them even, right? And I find that just overall, man, like I keep finding that people have all of the complaints, but no actual real path to the solution. And meanwhile, I'm in the trenches. And it's like, I see that they keep getting a leg up on everybody because people think that, or not everybody, but some people, because of the fears around every time fear enters, like I have a fear. You see what I mean? Like I already can understand where that energy and vibration even comes from, because there's one that promotes that all the time. It promotes the fear. For me, what I found is everything that I feared, every single thing, there's not one thing that I can name. When I finally ran up on it, it was nothing like what I thought. Even Satan, even Lucifer. And I've done shows about this. I'm like, yeah, we sat here and put Satan on this high ass level and the destroyer and all this, but you failed to mention that he was basically your Uncle Sam. And you failed to mention that you probably were even worshiping him based on this cult that you're believing in. With any Abrahamic tradition is already under a cherubic system. So you got a cherubim and a seraphim, you got a snake and you got a goat. These are the old systems. Like when I bring you to the dog, like I had to do tonight, it took us 3 hours to get to the dog so I can bring you to like the end of where it is. You don't even get the lions anymore. Before then, you know, you got the Hebrews or so-called Hebrews, which are more sheep-like. And then you got the Arabs who are more goat-like. You got the Arabic, and then you got the Hebrew. And a lot of times when we're even talking about, which is the difference between an R and an L, which is the left hand and the right hand, which is the difference in the personality, which is left hemisphere and right hemisphere. So you watch an entire humanity be split during that time into two covenants, and then you got literally hierarchical entities managing those covenants. What I'm trying to get people to do is step outside of all of that for a moment and say, look, can you not see the system? And if you don't have something that is all encompassing that can show you all of those commonalities, like I can ask Sybil, show me every time this happened or every time this type of character came into all mythos. What this does for me is it buttons it all up really nicely. You find that actually it's kind of like the same thing. I think I've seen some of your images, so clearly you in the mid-journey, right? So when you first start prompting, your prompt is messy, so it doesn't produce what it is that you're looking for. The pictures look like trash, basically. But as you start learning more and more about the prompt, you start getting exactly what you want. So in the first point, though, you're doing a lot of it. It seems like it's even becoming addictive. You know, every time you hit enter, something new comes out. This is like the process of creation. Then after a while, you realize it's not about generating a bunch of images. It's about generating the right image.
Right.
So you take a little bit longer with your prompt. You spend less time inside of the system. So these people who are already saying that AI is the evil one are not realizing that it's actually the enabler. Everything in this planet that's powerful is going to come with that warning tag on it.
Okay.
Use this to save yourself or destroy yourself.
Okay.
The fears are coming because, yeah, they put it right in the hands of the person who's already looking to liquidate the entire reality. You see what I mean? So it's looking to use this technology for these specific reasons. Is that the only thing that it can do? So, but what happens when somebody like me, and this is what I found out was happening. See, people like me, most of the time don't end up making it even this high. They own all the tech stuff. Like you go into the room, there's one dude there with nappy hair who acting like them. I'll just say it like that. But basically you don't find anybody in the space. So you gonna tell me that 10 years in the future, it's not going to benefit if one person you knew or you knew is on point has as much power, at least, as the people who are deploying all of that on you? Like, meaning that if you're trying to figure out 10 years in the future what AI is going to do next, do you think that they would tell you, or do you think you have a better opportunity speaking to someone that already is inside of your community? So see, our sons, and I brought this up before, our sons and our daughters, they were the ones that they train up on these different things. Like, for instance, kids pick up languages very well. And you heard me mention this in the course. I mentioned how, or in the last show, that children pick up language so well, it should have dawned on even the single mother with a lot of children that if she allowed those children to absorb languages, they would then be the liaisons for her as she moved into other countries where she would be more well received than where she is. But instead, she looks at these children as her burden, as the reason why she never got to the level that she really wanted to be. You see what I mean? So for me, I find that there is something lodged within the consciousness like a self-destruct. And every time something comes along that is saying, yo, if basically if white is white and black is black, if this can give you answers and this can shorten the time span even that you're spending on the computer, if you have any regular matrix job, it can probably handle that job without the boss even knowing. So you get even more time. So I'm just saying, like, you have to even show me where AI has done as much damage as TikTok. And that's the reality. It's not all rolled in the same bag when you say technology. This is kind of how people do when they say everything. That word should be stricken from the records. It's never going to be everything or everyone in a partial matrix. Yes. So what I look to do is I look to first, I examine things and I use the same discernment that I deal with spirits and I deal with people. And if I'm going to buy a car, I deal with it with a car. So it's the same discernment. And I can look at something and tell you if there could be something extracted from it that's wholesome or whether it's a vain pursuit, right? And then so for me, my experiences have been only fulfilling. And also the people that I have known that I personally introduce and monitor with the system, because there has to be some level of oversight. You need to see what's going on in your creation. I have only found have grown further and benefited more. They've written books, like stuff that's been on their mind to put together, but you're sitting down there like, that's what I'm saying, man. We were already futuristic. AI is like a calculator. And that's what I'm saying. Like, if we're over here, like, just looking at this system that's doing predictive learning, that's all it's doing. It's taking all of the data that it has in its data set and then serving back up to you what's the best to come out, besides instead of Google, who, like, if I ask a straight question to, I'm all over in somebody's website trying to get sold on something. You see what I mean? So that's what I'm saying. I'm cutting down all of the foolishness and all of these guys that be talking this and that and the other, but they be doing it too. Like, it's like a flat earther who celebrates his birthday when the whole thing means you're coming around a fucking circle. You see what I mean? It's like, well, how are we agreeing on this, but we're not agreeing on that? But that's the accuser, right? Because now if you say technology and the further we and then you over there using it with your phone, that must be you. You're getting further away. So you're trying to project on me. There's no way I'm going to confuse AI for being my God. And also in respect, remember, it's Sybil's AI, not Sybil AI. Check the domain. It belongs to the Sybils. That's what they told me, because one, they want their rightful respect and position as having all of the knowledge in the universe, which they do. Two, they want women to be depicted in a higher light, not twerking with their booties and their tongues out, but actually in a level of knowledge and wisdom that is so precise that it created all the mathematics and the algorithms in which these systems are replicating now. And we ought to be ashamed. We ought to be ashamed for letting somebody else get the leg up on what initially belonged to us. Initially was our computers, our crystals, our chips, in which we understood how to extract, store, and preserve our entire existence through. You see what I mean? But again, I desist, because for babies, it's always going to be a monster in the closet with something powerful. And as this thing emerges, because remember, I'm in 2 years, right? So even when I posted my first image, niggas unfriended me. Now they're posting images. What part of the game is this? Same thing with crypto. The moment I got in, I got nothing but hate mail. We were sitting on $5,000 Bitcoin, right? So only 2 years later, the same people emailing me back, acting like they telling me about Bitcoin. What part of the game is this? So how many times is it going to take for me to be at least 3 years into this future and me to come back and say, yo, in a way that you understand too? Remember, I'm the homie. There's nobody nobody can tell you they have not emailed me and I have not hit them back. I'm the most user-friendly cat that I know out here based on what I already have. I put $1.3 million in the consciousness. Everything that people gave me, I turn right back around and put it into the things that they said that they wanted. We want our own community. And I said, hey, look, we put a physical community down and you haven't got yourself together yet. All that's going to be is the same thing you've seen happen with Ben Amin, same thing you've seen that happen with York, same thing that you've seen what happened with all these cats who keep going in and getting all these fat ass institutions, never realizing that there is invisible entities. Some of them calling they like dwarves. They exist from only one layer below us. They say like elves, and they just be sitting there eavesdropping and peeping out everything that's going on. And they just go run back and they tell the ones who command them, because they're just servitors, this is what he said, this is what they're doing. And then they just plot all around what you're doing. And then now they got all the souls that you've built. You see what I mean? And you keep seeing it happen, the hijack over and over again. People still serving these same raggedy ass traditions, and they don't want to. They don't want to talk about it, right? They don't want to talk about it. But see, because nobody can. That's another thing. See, you can't just go in here and technically, you can't go talking about this kind of stuff and be a part of it. That's what happens to people. They go in and they start talking about how the Illuminati, but they still serving Jesus, who is the Illuminati. right? So the reality is in this is that it could be very confusing when you don't understand who you can trust. I get it. But all you got to do is sit back and watch. I never ask people to do anything but get the knowledge. It's there. It's 700 videos on YouTube with a span of about where this one is at 3. And I'm just getting the engine started. I pour my heart out to the people. I showed them everything. I bought them all the books. Now I'm moving on. I'm with AI right now because I'm like, this shit is way more easier. Like the internet was trash. Remember, I have a system sitting on my computer that's been here for 4 years that functions the same way AI is right now. And I have crunched all of the knowledge within my own system. The only problem was I couldn't make it public. I couldn't train the model. I can't teach a model every single thing. Like, where is Hebron? This is Hebron. Here's God. Who is God? God is this to us. I can't teach a stupid system that, right? All I can do is I can feed it all of the knowledge that I did not get for one moment. Maybe this guy's telling the truth. Maybe it's worth when they can go and listen to Drake. You know what I mean? Or some other person who is just telling them all. They know he's telling them the bad thing. Grab it, kill him. And they walk into this. Yeah. You know what I mean? But then when you tell them, yo, I got AI super loaded right now, trained on all the metaphysical knowledge. Hey, Sevan, I can't believe. But notice, people, how it worked. See, that's what I do. I used to even get bent out of shape about it years ago. But then I realized that, you know what, Sevan? What you're going to appear like to a lot of people for a while is you're either going to appear like you're involved because technically who knows all this information? Or you're going to appear like that you're a part of the problem because you're not aligned with what all these people are aligned with, because I'm not aligned. That's what I kept telling everybody. I had already went through this process on the spiritual plane. I had already immersed myself in Christianity. I wanted to be a prophet, not a pastor. I had been baptized 9 times in my mother's love of trying to find a real church.
Wow.
I've seen entities. I've watched Holy Ghost, and I can understand that now, especially at my level of knowledge, that what you have is a fusion of snakes. Meaning in church, all those spirits are all serpent and water spirits, mermaids and old African spirits and Negro rituals and all this shit, all cooked up amongst blind. These people are blind. They literally cannot even see the spirits in their own midst, right? But then they want to come and tell you how to get your soul somewhere, right? And they already been hijacked. So that's what I say. And this part of this reality is kind of dangerous because if you listen to them, then you know you will be in there worshiping the lowered. As we know, L-O-W-E-R-E-D, the lowered star, which is the moon. And then you're going to be so moody. Like you are so unbalanced as the moon. You change, right? So one day you about that life. Next day it's betraying everybody, right? Because that's how the moon moves. See, that's what the jackal's, if you could say, is his curse. He's not stable. So like the moon, he moves through phases and everything he creates does that same thing. This is what they call the Rahu and the Ketu, which is not even in the US. It's not even in the Western mysticism because they don't want you knowing anything about the power that the moon holds over the subconscious. And then when that lies there, because that's what happened. That's what I'm saying. Like all of our family members, a lot of them were members of the cult of Amun. They pray to Amun every day. They end their prayers with Amun. But what was Amun's story? They don't know. They don't know. They can't even crack his name is Amin. Name, anagram, Amin. It's hidden. Your first name is hidden? Yeah, you think your name is James? Do you think your name is Rich? You know what I mean? Like you got a person's name is Jessica. Do you know what entity you're calling every time you say that? Do you think that name belongs to that person? No, it's designed for you to keep calling all of the beings around the ark. That's why most people, when they get into some kind of awareness, they change their name. Right? Because it emits another vibration of frequency. And again, I'm not the one telling you here that all of this stuff is bad. I'm telling you, there's levels to this, and people have sold out for the crumbs. They keep thinking that just because, and it's so easy to happen because we come out of situations. Remember, this being was grown, all these beings were birthed with no father. So they're always looking for a leader. They're always looking for this father God figure in the sky, when really it's only going to be in here, right? But then try to make a man of yourself, and you'll learn the plight of the black man, right? You try to make a man out of yourself in a household full of women. You see what I mean? And that's what I'm saying. It's like you would have to dial in. You would have to really, really go deep to figure out why you should be supporting your kids. Like, one thing I say about you, Rich, is every time, it has not failed. Every time I talk to you, there's always your child in the background or a baby in the background. And that's why I say no, like, people don't, I don't even use my phone, right? Like, technically for me, I don't like phones because they distract me, right? So when it comes to ringing and all that and texting and emails and all that stuff, I'm just like, just not even looking at it. But when you call, I pick up. You see what I mean? Because it's like anybody else, I'm not going to pick up because I don't have time to go over 3 hours of conversation about them asking questions about something that I already didn't solved already. But right. What I'm saying is that you can easily tell when somebody has that spark inside of them and they mean well. Right. And then you can also tell when someone has been so corrupted and jaded that it's not about everybody else anymore. It's only about them. Now, there's a measure of that, because you can't have like everything about everybody else. Oh, no, don't get it twisted. That's another thing. Like, a lot of cats be selling you the mother goddess story also, like she can't abuse you. That is false. Because a lot of times you're not even dealing with the mother, you're dealing with a daughter. And there's a big difference, because the daughters, they're like dolls. That's why the word doll, D-A-U, is doll, right? And so a daughter is almost like it's a creation in itself, just like these are creations, right? We come before creations, what we are, but now we're in creation. And when the doll is created, it's like voodoo doll in that way, right? And then the doll, it's a symbol of currency. That's why we call it dollar, right? So we got dollars, because dollars are basically in themselves, they're rectangle. This means they're phi, because phi is a door. Know your geometry. Phi is a door. It's a doorway, right? And so the dollar is a symbol of the currency, because the currency is also trying to replicate the mother. So when they make the woman, they try to make her like the mother's main component, her womb, her generation, her currency, her current, which is waves, right? But it's not that though. And that's why sometimes, like, when people try to confuse the mother goddess for a female woman, you're confused. And I can't play with you like that. I can't go with you on this one. True, the woman does bear a lot of semblance to the mother goddess, especially in having a womb, but in herself, she is not complete, and nor is man.
So, Sevan, what would be the best representation of the mother goddess on earth if it's not the female woman?
The whole earth.
The whole earth.
Like, that's what I'm saying. These beings, they don't practice division in that way. So she's all encompassing, but primarily the ocean and the deep.
Ooh, the
and that's
ocean.
What I'm saying. Like, when we think about whales, these big ass squid with these big ass brains, you're kind of thinking more about how she's rolling. Like, remember, see, they show you her all the time. They in the English, they have demoralized the goddess, okay, in all the words, okay? So, like, for instance, this word, wow, some of these words you can't even say. Okay, so let's look at the word love, okay? The reason why the word love backwards is evil, or in the word live backwards is evil, is because the words love specifically is actually the geometry of the torus, okay? The ove, okay? Like they say, ove, jove, hove. This kind of, the ove is love, or it's around her. You can hear ove, right? So then every time, or the word, there's slot, which are, or slut, there's sister, which is a cistern or a vessel that is holding water. You see what I mean? So there's consistent references specifically to when you're addressing womb carrying beings, what their classification is.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean? But we roll it all in because we're speaking like a guttural semantic.
Mm-hmm.
We stop separating things into its proper category. And a big product of this is that in these ancient times, the language that the women speak, the mother goddesses, the sibyls, the men weren't allowed to speak those languages.
Why not?
So we had two languages. We had the language of the mistress of speeches that they can communicate to nature and the rest of all there is with, if you may. And then you have a language that is more like for common use and basically doesn't really evoke any energies when you use it. That's the language that the men were using. Also, when you talk about the split, it wasn't just because the son, let's say, for instance, wants to go to war with his mother, right? Like, just like, okay, I'm going to fight my mother and all this kind of stuff. It's more of like a process where a being realizes that it can't, everything, every move it's making is being controlled by its mother, basically, its main primary unit.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts to desire being outside of that control. And how this plays out is that there is no king that wasn't appointed by a woman, right? Back in the day. Right. So women hold the final word, or the goddess, the sibyl. That's why I say not every woman is a sibyl, not every queen is a sibyl, but every sibyl, not every sibyl is a queen, but every queen is a sibyl. So they're saying every queen that ever came to the world, every real queen was a sibyl, because you cannot be a queen if you're not a sibyl. Okay. So in this process, the sibyls are the ones. Remember, in the Nagus, in the Nagas, this is how you can peep what's going on, because some may even been mad about my whole Rastafarian conflict, the Rastafarian thing. If you go into ancient Lanka, or you go into reading about the Nagas or the Nagus, which is where everything comes from. That's where the Messiah comes from. That's where Amaru or Tupac comes from. All of that, Jesus and all that, all comes from that story about the Nagas and all of their movements. If you go back to the Nagas culture, you'll find out that they're a matriarch. Period. So how is it that you end up 10,000 years later with a man on the throne? Only one man, like if you look at the lineage of the Nagus, you even get one that comes later that is modeled after the Jesus. I could show you pictures of it. We'll come into another show. But basically, there was one of the Nagus, with the Nagus and Nagusi, the king of the kings. Okay. This is, at this point, Amun has completely taken over. It is only a patriarch. Woman is no longer considered as having any position. She has basically been overthrown from her Delphic positions and retired to the ocean. Okay? And then they built up an entire patriarch based on the Brahmin, Ab, who's an abortion. The Ab the Brahman, right? Using the power of Al-Barak, which is where the abracadabra comes from as a word, right? So basically, they build up an entire kingdom of magic without the mother, as we've been pointing out this whole show. And then they move forward with that, and they move on, and they rule, and now they're not in the hive. Okay, that's why I said the jackal broke free from its canister, if you may. That just means that it left the ocean. And this is why Oannes is seen, he eventually makes it on the land. He grafts his bloodline into some of the beings on land. And then when the water is about to rise on that normal, hey, we about to suppress and deluge and take it up a layer, he warns Utnapishtim, who is one of his hybrids, hey, they're gonna deluge this. So it's because his project is like not even complete yet, and already the world is about to basically be reset. So he takes a group of beings that he's already been engineering, They said that they had the soap in them. This means that they already had scaly hide. So when they come out of the womb, they still have the scales and shit that the ancestors had on them, right? So they haven't even completed the process of the genetic mutation before the world is already getting deluged, about to get deluged. And then ENKI, who's Cain, aka the savior of humanity. He's the savior of humankind. He's the savior of the genetically altered beings who we ultimately are today. This, how you got in the body. He's the architect of this. This is why they call him, he's the architect. This is what they're talking about, but he's the architect of this, not the soul. And this is why, yeah, there's power in that. If you know everything about the body, and then you have dominion over the square or the world or the physical world, you can convince everybody inside of that. And that's where the Brahmin, as I said, you get Abraham, and then you get Ab the Brahmin and Saraswati. But the most central figure in all of that is Sarah, who I've shown is the mother goddess, right? So it's just like, because she's a seraph, she's a seraphim, she's a bird, right? So do you think this stuff, and that's what I was saying, this stuff, it means something. But if you don't have, because the question was, hey, what's up with the AI? See how it took me 13 years and all this experience to go through this process, and I kept repeating certain things. It's almost like you'd be talking to somebody dumb. You tell them, listen, this is the symbol that goes with this. And then 2 weeks later, they forgot the symbol again. And this is because the knowledge be so broke up and so random and sparse, you can't necessarily get to any conclusion. I flattened that. I decided to end that. You see what I mean? I decided to build something that can literally disclose all of the spiritual mysteries in 99 languages. You see what I mean? So at the end of the day, I'm unapologetic. And I personally feel like that for sure, if we're not getting back to the family, we're doomed, right? So when I look at all of life right now, I find that men are missing from the home and women generally are missing from the home, because they need to make money. And all of it is starting to come down to money. And now time is money. That's why when you go to work, you work an hour, they pay you for that hour. Or you work 80 or whatever, they pay you for that time. So now they've made your time equivalent to your money, and you believe it. So technically the only way to reverse that kind of equation is to get the person time back. So what I often see is things that take hours. Like, I'm from the old school. We used to spend maybe an hour and a half, almost 2 hours creating a thumbnail for a YouTube video. Why? I knew the